Gardner City Council will come to order and invite everyone in attendance to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first item on the agenda this evening is just a presentation regarding some information about the downtown district plan that we talked about at the last council meeting. This is probably the first of many of these kinds of conversations that we're going to have, and this, I believe, is meant to be mostly informational. We'll drill down on the subject at later meetings. So, with that, Brian, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. As requested during the second council meeting in December, staff did create a draft scope for a downtown plan that you hopefully received earlier today. The anticipated scope for the consultant, along with possible outcomes and policy questions, are contained within the RFP. Included in the RFP is a map of the downtown area that is defined on page 64 of the comprehensive plan. That's in the upper left-hand corner. It has zones 1 and 2. 1 is the downtown core, and 2 is defined as the downtown edge. In the implementation section of the comprehensive plan on page 124, it does state the city should initiate the process to further study and create plans for the following areas. That includes downtown, and it also includes the Johnson County Fairgrounds. And so on the second part of that map, you see Area 3, which includes the fairgrounds. Okay, several of the outcomes envisioned by the downtown plan would be the first thing would be to create a vision for the downtown. Create a plan for use by citizens, developers, owners, and design professionals and staff that is understood and supported by the stakeholders. The plan will provide a detailed framework and recommendations to support existing local businesses and to guide redevelopment, new development, investment options, and activities in Gardner's downtown. It would show the density potential of retail, restaurant, office space, and residential. It would show how mixed-use development will create a clientele for both day and evening usage. That is putting feet on the street. Instead of being 8 to 5, must be 8 to 10. Provides transportation direction, whether that's US 56, whether that's the side streets. That also includes parking and pedestrian. We also wish to maintain the character of the community. The plan would employ graphics and diagrams to illustrate our downtown vision, our streetscapes, our signage, our buildings and district layout. And it would effectively implement the vision's goals and objectives of our comp plan, economic development strategy, and other related policy. One thing you asked is the scope of services. What our consultant would typically do would be review our comp plan and economic development strategy. They would develop and execute a program for stakeholder engagement. They would work with the Gardner Chamber of Commerce, along with a possible Citizens Advisory Committee and/or Downtown Business Advisory Committee. They would use this input from these meetings to create our vision. Using that vision and incorporating input from our stakeholders, they would work to create a detailed outline for a downtown plan. Based on that outline, they would create a draft and submit the draft plan to the city. They would participate in one or more presentations of the draft plan to our stakeholders, and then a presentation to the Planning Commission and the governing body. One of the big things that need to be addressed as we start this process are policy questions that we all need to think about as we go into this. First one is, what is the character that we wish to maintain? Is historic preservation important? How best to support existing local businesses while encouraging new developments? Are we supportive of strict enforcement of signed building and property maintenance codes to help create and preserve a revitalized downtown. Okay. Regarding the fairgrounds, this is likely to be a charged issue for some within the community. However, the area is adjacent to the downtown. Are we supportive of incorporating the fairgrounds into the plan? What are the limits to the downtown? A big issue we have right now is parking. Where are residents or visitors going to park? We need to talk about gateway monument signage at the entrance to our downtown area. What should the standards for the streetscape improvements be? And the main question, is it important to create a vibrant, attractive, and pedestrian-friendly downtown? Is it important to build upon a mix of retail, office, restaurant, and residential land uses? And what are those appropriate standards for development of community, retail, office, and residential development in the downtown? With that said, you just received this today, and we know you need adequate time to review the outcomes and policy issues and provide questions and feedback to staff. So we were not anticipating questions this evening. However, if you have some, we'd be happy to try to address tonight or take those and get you answers in the near future.
I have a question. Sure. I dug out my Gardner Main Street corridor plan that I got when I was on the planning commission, and it was established in like 2001, I think. And I don't think we ever did anything with this, but there's some of the stuff we just talked about. There's signage for the downtown and monuments and stuff like that. Are we gonna use this to incorporate, or are we starting new, or?
Actually, the consultant was required when we talk about reviewing the comprehensive plan and our economic development strategy and other policy issues. We would provide him or her that plan.
Okay.
We don't want to recreate the wheel.
Right. I'm just worried, I mean, there's a lot of work in here.
Right.
There's a lot of good information in here that just kind of sat on the shelf, so.
Right. We definitely don't want to,
We can't go backwards, but I was hoping we could use some of this.
Right, our plan would be to not start from
Okay.
scratch, use what we had.
Kind of to that, could we not have a work session, perhaps going through that plan and discussing that in detail, and maybe I guess I've looked at that as well, and I think that there's a lot of validity still to the information in there. So why would we not perhaps say, hey, this is the plan. Now what we want is somebody maybe to come in and develop a more tactical approach to how we get there, help lay out a roadmap rather than recreating something. I mean, I don't know how many people have seen that plan and reviewed it in detail, but it seems pretty relevant.
Well, I think that we obviously have an opportunity to work on this at a work session type level.
They will have to be updated, because there's some traffic studies and
Right.
stuff like that, and things have changed in 14 years, obviously. But
Yeah.
it's a good start.
No, I would agree. I think that some of the character issues within that particular proposal that I read look very similar to some of the ideas that have been shared to us by, members of staff and other entities, today. So I don't see any particular reason why we would want to, I'm not saying don't do a study, I'm saying let's take this, let's take what we've got, and see if we can build on it, instead of just, again, starting from ground zero and moving forward. So.
Sure. Well, I think, between whether or not we think the scope is sufficient, and then what Tori's brought to light here, we've certainly got some things to talk about, and my guess is this is probably due for a work session on a night where we don't also have a council meeting, because we probably want to do a deep dive on the information that we've already got before we go out for proposals. Anybody else have anything for Brian? Okay, Brian, thanks.
Thanks, Ryan.
Next item on the agenda is public comments. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. If you're interested in making public comments, please step to the podium, State your name and address for the record and be heard. With no one coming forward, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a council that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Freeman, that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Consent agenda passes. New business item number 1. Consider proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding the storage of boats, trailers, and recreational vehicles. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. The format in the CAF that you have before you has been recently updated, but actually may look a little bit different to you this evening. We're starting the CAF by providing both the Planning Commission and staff's recommendation right up front. The Planning Commission does recommend that the City Council approve the proposed amendments to Title 18 of the zoning ordinance, Section 18, 140, 100 to the Gardner Municipal Code regarding the storage of boats, trailers, and recreational vehicles. In addition to the Planning Commission's recommendation, staff recommends the City Council approve proposed amendments to Title 8, Property Maintenance, Section 8, 100.010 of the Gardner Municipal Code regarding storage in front yards. Based on previous discussion and direction on the storage of boats, trailers, and RVs, the Planning Commission at their December 16th meeting held a public hearing to consider amendments to Section 18, 140, 100 of the zoning ordinance. There were no interested parties that spoke during the public hearing. The Planning Commission voted 6-0 to forward the proposed amendments to the City Council. The recommendation for approval with a minor change that outdoor storage of construction materials can apply to fence construction. Staff did make those changes. The proposed language does permit one hauling trailer in the front yard on a paved driveway and one boat, RV, camping trailer, or hauling trailer in the side or rear yard. This is a change from the current regulations which prohibits storage of boats, RVs, and trailers in the front yard. The proposed changes also address exceptions for storage of other vehicles used for residence occupations, and that's to be approved by the Business and Economic Development Director. In addition to Section 18, 140, 100, the regulations for storage boats, trailers, and recreational vehicles, Section or Chapter 12 of the Property Maintenance, while amendments to the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations require a public hearing by the Planning Commission and final action by the governing body, text amendments to other chapters of the City Code do not require a public hearing by the Planning Commission. Staff is including language to changes in Chapter 8 of Property Maintenance as part of the zoning ordinance text amendments to assure consistency throughout the code. It also should be noted that these changes, if they are adopted, the publication date should be set for February 11th to avoid issues with the animal and garden changes previously approved in this same code section. And that ordinance is scheduled for publication on February 4th. So suggested motions, staff would recommend adopting ordinance
2475
2475
and 2476.
2476.
Okay, thank you, Brian. We're going to open the floor for public comments. You might want to hang tight, just in case we don't have anyone coming forward. Anyone wishing to make public comment on new business item number 1, now's your opportunity to step forward and be heard. With no one stepping forward, before we move on to questions for Brian, I understand I've been advised by the city attorney that ordinance 2475 would require a governing body vote, which means that the mayor would vote as well, and actually that applies for new business item number 2 as well, for the approval of the final plat. Just so it doesn't seem hinky when I vote on those items. Now that I've said that, questions for Brian regarding new business item number 1?
If I could interject, I think you have a draft, revised ordinance 2476 that was passed out before the meeting. That's just an update of the language. We had a resident look through it, and it was a little bit confusing. And so he suggested some language that was able to clear it up. So you have the revised ordinance.
Very good.
I don't really have a question. I have more of just a statement. I know we've already talked about it, and there's consensus for that, how we've got it worked out, but I still am in favor of having the RVs and boats and driveways as long as they don't impede, approach the sidewalk, but I just wanna kinda get my 2 cents out there.
Okay. Anyone else? If not, I'd entertain a motion on ordinance 2475.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second, should that we approve ordinance number 2475, approving amendments to section 18, 140, 100 of the zoning ordinance. Winters,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Shute.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Ordinance number 2475 passes. Again, I entertain a motion on ordinance number 2476.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Shute, second Harrison, that we adopt ordinance number 2476, approving amendments to section 8, 110 of the property maintenance code. Shute,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Winters,
Yes.
Harrison.
Yes.
Ordinance 2476 passes. New business item number 2, consider final plat for Copper Springs 3 and amendment to the Parks Master Plan.
Thank you, Mayor. There are 2 components to the Planning Commission recommendation. First component is that the Gardner City Council initiate amendment to the 2009 Parks Master Plan to provide an acceptable alternative for future trail development within the area as proposed in the body of the attached Planning Commission staff report, and which is listed as condition 7. And number 2, approve the final plats, application SP 1406 for Copper Springs 3, and accept easements and rights-of-way for the final plat of Copper Springs 3, subject to the following conditions. 1, all required excise tax shall be paid prior to recording of the final plats. 2, revise all labels and references to Copper Springs 2 to read Copper Springs 3. All additions and corrections as noted by engineering. All building setback lines shall be removed from the final plats. A final stormwater plan addressing the impacts of increased runoff from the site be submitted, reviewed, and approved. The developer shall provide the city with a written agreement with the property owner to the west of lots 5 and 6 to extend the stormwater line or provide written verification that the property owner is opposed to the extension. And as we stated, initiate an amendment to the 2009 Parks Master Plan. Okay, existing conditions, it's a 136-acre development. Existing street improvements and utilities are in place for the most part. The original plan looked like this. Copper Springs was completed already, and this would be the section is Copper Springs 3. A lot of the infrastructure is already in place. The roads are not complete. There's not a final lift of asphalt. There are some issues out there which they've agreed to address. As you can see, here's some pictures of the road. Upper right, you can see where the final lift of asphalt is not up to the curb line. And what that results is in the bottom right. Water doesn't drain to the inlets at this point in time. You also see some cracks in the pavement. So there's a number of issues from a public works infrastructure perspective that they will be addressing. Public project summary, this will be a 32-lot development for new single-family dwellings. They will be adding sidewalks along all streets, and there will be inspection and repair of infrastructure as necessary. Trail dedication, in the current Parks Master Plan, this trail is identified on the west side of the tract, and I believe that the trail was not dedicated on the north part in Copper Springs in that original part. So that's why we would need an initiation of a change to that. It makes sense in a lot of situations to put a trail close to the floodplain. That's not an area that can be easily developed, and it's more of a more natural setting. Okay, the Planning Commission did vote unanimously to approve this item at their December 16th meeting and forward to the City Council with a recommendation of approval and to accept the easements and rights-of-way, subject to the conditions as noted by staff. The suggested motion would be to have staff initiate an amendment to the 2009 Parks Master Plan to provide an accessible alternative for future trail development associated with the Copper Springs development, to accept the easements and rights-of-way for the submitted final plat of Copper Springs 3, and to approve the final plat application FP 1406 for Copper Springs 3, subject to conditions 1 through 7.
Is that going to require 3 separate motions?
Ryan?
Or is, Brian?
On the final plat, yes, that requires separate action, vote on the master plan. What was the third?
Accepting the easements and rights of way?
That should be part and parcel of the final plat.
Right.
Okay.
And the amendment to the master plan should go first.
So 2, we'll make 2 motions. Okay. Very good. We'll open the floor for public comments. If there's anybody in attendance that would like to speak regarding new business item number 2, please come forward and be heard. No one coming forward. Questions for Brian regarding new business item number 2?
Brian, I was curious, can you explain it just quickly, the amendment to the Parks Plan? So what are we voting on? That are we deciding where it's going tonight, or are we just saying?
No, it's just asking staff to start that process of looking at where it should go and initiate that
It would still be
relocation.
contiguous with the rest of it?
Right, I mean, we'd work with Jeff on that and
Yeah.
make sure it makes sense. I mean, I don't want to have a trail that nobody can get to and nobody can leave once they get to the other
Sure.
end. So.
But it will still connect north and
Right.
south.
Yeah, I might add to that a little bit that the floodplain property that Brian highlighted there a little bit, it's also, you can see on the picture on the screen there that the blue dot there in the middle is an area that the developer is interested in putting in a park for that subdivision or community type facility. So they're putting in the trail close to or along that floodplain property, may even give us some additional opportunities to provide some connections to that. I think it'd be even a better location. The original plan identified on the far west end of the property, the trail to go there, with the thought that there may be an arterial street put in there at some point in time. It's my understanding that that's not the case anymore. So it would make sense to take a look at putting the trail at a different location.
Other questions?
Well, obviously, this is only addressing a small part of the actual, the full development. The developer, I'm assuming, is doing some phases, so I was wondering, do we have any indication from the developer as to, when they anticipate potential build-out of the portions of the parcel?
My name's Dave Rhodes, 335 West Madison, Gardner, Kansas. You tell me what the economy's gonna do, and I'll tell you how quickly it's gonna happen. Our intentions is to try to build this first phase out in a year and a half, and if it's successful, then come in with another 10 acres and develop another 30-some lots. There's a total of 95 undeveloped, partially developed lots out there. We'd like to clean it up.
I mean, I've been out through that area, and it'll be nice to get that finished up out there, so.
You've been out there, we tried to mow it, broke 2 mowers doing it.
Thanks, Dave, appreciate it.
Thanks, David, and Happy New Year. Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to initiate an amendment to the 2009 Parks Master Plan.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Shute, that we initiate an amendment to 2009 Parks Master Plan to provide an acceptable alternative for future trail development associated with the Copper Springs development. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The amendment passes. And also entertain the motion on the accepting of the easements and the approval of the final plat.
So,
Second. Motion Shute, second. Winners, that we accept the easements and rights of way for the submitted final plat of Copper Springs 3 and approve the final plat application at P1406 for Copper Springs 3, subject to conditions 1 through 7. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? New business item number 2 passes. New business item number 3. Consider Southwest Johnson County Economic Development Corporation Agreement. Matt, good evening.
Good evening. The proposed agreement will last for 1 year, and it'll end on December 31st of 2015. The contract's for $35,000, and it was included in the 2015 budget. Recently, the city completed its economic development strategy, and within the strategy, it was recommended that the city leverage its relationship with the EDC and make use of its network and expertise to promote economic development. The city plans to move forward implementing the economic development strategy this year, and the EDC has the ability to assist with that, with those efforts. In the plan, it specifically mentioned that the EDC assists with developing a business retention and expansion program, and also assists with developing marketing materials and distributing them. I'd now like to introduce Tom Reeder, President of Southwest Johnson County EDC.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening.
You got a sidekick, Tom.
I do.
Hey,
Two-person show,
Hey,
two-person.
Chip.
My name is Tom Reeder. I'm with Southwest Johnson County EDC.
I'm Chip Corcoran. I'm the current board chair for the EDC for 2014 and moving into 2015, but hopefully for last year.
And first of all, I would like to thank you for your continued support of the EDC and compliment you on the comprehensive plan completion and the economic development plan, and certainly look forward to working with you to make that a success, to define the items as you, or help you define those items and then plan to implement those plans. Is it right or what was that?
Right.
We do this, I do this each time I come here, but just a refresher. The organization was started 22 years ago. It's been a cooperative effort between the City of Gardner, City of Edgerton, New Century Air Center, and the school district. And we're a not-for-profit 501c6, which is a development corporation. And we have, aside from the public members, we have about 93 private sector members. Our mission is to assist in the creation and retention of jobs and investment in our service area. We have a board made up of 14 members. 4 of those are the permanent parties I mentioned, and then 10 come from the other members of the organization. We work in, I think it was mentioned earlier, we work with startup businesses. We have people come into us and we're lucky enough in Johnson County to have a network. We can refer people that are starting a business to help them develop a business plan, to help them really get their idea together, even to help them get capital. And so we most of the time direct those people to those resources. But we also help them find, whether it's real estate or help them to develop their market locally. We work at existing businesses, and it's an old adage in economic development, it's a whole lot easier to keep them and help a business expand than it is to bring in new business. So we're very cognizant of the fact that the businesses that we have need attention, they have issues, and they also are a great provider of new contacts for expansions. We do new business development and marketing for the region, and what we try to do is look at each of our partners, the assets, the things that they want to accomplish and implement, and include that in our marketing strategy. The business environment, we work with the communities to make sure that they're competitive within the economic development environment, where that means working with the planning department on zoning issues or planning issues. We're not experts, but we can help get those resources to the city. Policies, such as your abatement policy or other economic development policies will help with. One of the things that we do is we work with what I call the development allies in the region, and we're lucky to be in a metropolitan area. We go out into the rural Kansas area, and it's a lot more difficult to do economic development. We have so many resources that we can bring to bear. But in order to bring those to bear, we have to let the people who are our allies, who have contact with those projects, we have to let them know who we are, what we have to offer. And so whether it be Department of Commerce, KC Area Development, Smartport, Johnson County Partnership, which is the other economic development entities in the Johnson County area, the Chamber of Commerce, the real estate development and brokerage community, the utilities, Johnson County Community College, and the education. As you can see, it's a wide net, and what we try to do is make sure that in their part of the economic development world, they know we're here and what we have to offer. And we do that through a partnership. And as I said at the beginning, we thank you for your continued support of the organization. We are always asking what we can do to help the city accomplish their goals. That's part of that last phase, that business environment. So we look forward to it. I'm going to turn this over to Chip right now.
Just thought I'd share a few closing comments with you. Many of you know Tom Reeder personally, and have worked with him in the past. This is probably one of the last times he'll be appearing before you as the president of the EDC, so I wanted to make you aware of that. And also, he's leaving voluntarily. He's retiring. We're certainly congratulating him on his retirement, and we expect to see him involved from time to time with EDC activities. But we are working on recruiting and retaining a new president for the EDC, and don't have that person's name to share with you tonight, but I feel like we're getting very close to having that new person on board. Your city manager, Cheryl, has been extremely helpful in helping with that recruitment process. We've got a five-member steering committee that's working on that. The city's been an integral part, and as Tom mentioned, a great partner, and we look forward to continuing that partnership for many years to come. And thank Tom for being such a good steward for the EDC for the last 8 years. We'd be happy to answer any questions, and as Tom mentioned, we very much appreciate your support and look forward to working with you going forward.
Well, Chip, Tom, thank you. Real quick, I'm going to open the floor for public comments in case there are some. State your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Lee Moore, 521 East Dogwood Street. I have just a few concerns with this, namely with the agreement itself. Seems really light in the performance standards and reporting requirements. It's really open, and it seems like if we're going to spend $35,000, we would want to have this established up front, like exactly what we're going to be getting for that money, and what standards we're going to hold these nice gentlemen to. The other thing, one quick thing here too, is under compensation, it says the commission shall pay, and I think that could be a typo. Might be the city council should pay, or the governing body, or somebody, I don't know. I don't know who the commission is. There's no mention of commission anywhere else on this agreement. The other thing is, I don't see anybody from the businesses in Gardner standing up here yet. Maybe there will be, to advocate for this agreement. I'm not sure what has been done by the EDC in the past for the city of Gardner and our citizens. So I'm interested to hear, maybe the gentleman could explain or could expound on some of the very specific things they've done for Gardner in the past. I'd love to hear that. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Lee.
Would you like me to respond?
Yeah.
First of all, it probably is a typo, and we'll get that changed, the commission language. Second of all, one of the reasons that we don't have specifics right now is because the city has just completed their economic development plan. The idea is to work with what the city needs us to do. We weren't in a position right now to say, this is what we will do for you. The plan is to work with the city, have measurable goals, have those reporting requirements. I believe all of you have my contact information, and certainly am available, and my replacement will be available to answer any questions. We try to make it on a regular basis to the council to report what we do. As far as what we've done in the past, all the way from the recent Quick Trip. We worked with the Quick Trip people for probably 2 or 3 years, just to let them know that Gardner was a good market for them, to work with their real estate and development people to help move that project along. Probably the largest project in Gardner that we worked on is the Coleman Building. That was a large project, as you can imagine. We have 1.1 million square feet warehouse out in Gardner, creating jobs. That was, I'm thinking 4 or 5 years ago. And we have other smaller businesses that we've worked with in the area, whether it be on retention or finding new space or whatever. Each year we give you a report. I don't have one with me, but be willing to share that with anybody.
I don't know that in the presentation we got into the details specifically about our board membership, but Tom did mention our 4 standing members, one of which is you, Mayor, and we have representation from the business community as well, including businesses in Gardner on our board. And the board meets on a monthly basis. We have an executive committee that meets on a monthly basis. And we certainly hold our president and the EDC as an organization to the high standards in terms of performance and its mission itself. And I guess the only other thing I wanted to mention in terms of outcomes is that we feel like collectively we expand the reach of Gardner, at the state level and even at the national level maybe something that you might not have the resources to do, or one community might not have the resources to do individually, but collectively we're able to do that and advocate for Southwest Johnson County as well as specifically the city of Gardner.
Anyone else have questions?
Yeah, actually, I have a few. By the way, thanks, Tom, Chip, and I appreciate your service, Tom, and, it's gonna be, the next person's got some big shoes to fill, so, just wanna let you know that we do appreciate your service. I'm gonna bring up the same sections as Lee did, because I saw the same problems that were there. Personally, I have a bit of an issue signing a contract with no defined measurable. That's just a problem I've got. Whether or not we can take this back and look at, developing some and getting them before council so we can sign off on it, that would be a really good idea, I think. Secondly, from a reporting perspective, and I think this was based on last year's contract, and so in last year's contract, we didn't start the reporting requirements until the middle of last year. And so it says here, starting on July 31st, 2015, we're gonna see monthly reports. I think we have to strike that, because I think we're already doing monthly reporting. I don't wanna be waiting 6 months for a report.
And we do a written report that is distributed.
Yes, that is true, but I'd like to see them on a monthly basis. I wanna know what our the number of contacts, I don't need to know names, obviously, we've gotta maintain some confidentiality in the process, but I'd like to see some numbers. I wanna see the number of contacts that we've initiated with developers and real estate agents on behalf of Gardner in a 30-day period or 60-day period. I'd like to see, number of projects initiated or underway in terms of, coming to close. How many projects have closed in that period of time? We need to have some direct measurables so that we can make an informed decision on these contracts. And that's, I think, fair, and something that I think we need to have in front of us before we can do this. I'm not saying that the EDC doesn't fulfill a valued role. I'm all for it. I just need to know what we gotta close the feedback loop on this and know exactly what we're dealing with. That's all I got.
Okay. Real quick, what I'm understanding is, we will amend this as part of the, motion to look at some amendments, including, taking commission out and city council to replace it in the one spot. And then to Steve's point about, change your reporting so that, amend it so it says that it reflects the start beginning in January of 2015.
Actually, I would just strike the previous sentence with the first report due on July 31st, 2015, and thereafter. Put a period after activities, capitalize the written, and we're done.
Excuse me. Part of that, I think, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I think that is the contract last year started in July.
Yes, it did.
It's a contract that can be extended. And so through the extension, my thought was on that it started back, it's an extension of that contract, so but whatever.
So you're saying we would get monthly reports through July, that's just to close the gap?
That was to begin yeah.
Okay.
But.
Yeah, it should have been.
I think just taking that out.
Let's take a monthly,
and doing
say monthly reports and forget about initiation date.
Right.
You got that, Gene? It's
Just activities with monthly written reports, or just with written
Period.
reports?
Activities period, and then written reports shall be provided.
By the end of each month, get rid of success.
Okay, got it.
Got it?
Mm-hmm.
And then, just a follow-up to that, it should say city, it shouldn't say the council. The council actually doesn't pay anybody anything. It should be the city makes the payment.
And then I would almost say, with regard to performance standards, I know that we're gonna be developing them. I wanna see a deadline as to when they would be presented. Like, maybe the EDC shall establish a detailed plan of work within, X number of days of the initiation of this contract, so that we know that at the end of that period, or before the end of that period, we would have that plan, and it would be, you know, a collaborative effort between city staff and EDC.
To put a date on the organization when we're asking the city for the input
That's correct.
is, well,
I mean, I think he's just saying, I think what Steve is saying is he wants basically the city accountable as well. So, I mean, he's
Okay.
just saying, we need to have a date
Correct.
commitment between city staff and the EDC as to when these metrics are going to be available.
I think we can certainly work with that arrangement at administrative level. The one thing I'm concerned about is the transition between one president and another. You know, I've got some timing issues, but at the same time, I've got to deal with our budget. That's a very real issue. So if we can agree to work on that, and come back, you know, with an established timeline, as a report to you, and then, you know, I'll certainly commit to making that part of the responsibilities of the.
I'd be willing to sit down with you guys myself and help to work on that plan. I mean, I'm sure that other members of the council do the same thing. But I
And,
have something-
you know, one thing I've got to, you know, mention as well is that, you know, we've got a number of masters to serve. We've got, you know, City of Edgerton, we've got City of Gardner, we've got the Airport Commission, we've got, the private sector. And so it's a collaborative effort, amongst our membership, and so it's while we can certainly establish some focal points for the City of Gardner, we've also got to consider the balance, and that's probably why you see less specifics than more specifics. And but we're happy to work with you on these issues, and it's not something that hasn't come up that you've wanted to talk about before. So if we could work with the city manager on those items, like I said, I'm committed to doing so.
And we're going to be meeting with the Economic Development Strategic Group again, hopefully February instead of, it was looking like it was going to be January, but we would have had to meet in January and February. So we're talking about meeting with them in February. That's going to have to come back before council. At that point, I'm sure no one's going to forget that we need to provide more information to the EDC regarding the performance standards once we establish our economic development strategic plan and incorporate it.
Well, what kind of performance standards or measurements are you looking at? I mean, like examples. Because, I mean, some of this is, I mean, you may be working on it for years before something comes to fruition.
Oh, certainly.
I'm just curious. I mean, and I'm not against it. I'm just curious as to.
Well, I mean,
you just want numbers of what they've done, or are you?
well, we're gonna get that in
specific
reporting,
numbers?
that's not the issue. The issue that I've got is I wanna know that from the standpoint of our communication, our face to the development community, that we are in partnership and working in lockstep. One of the problems is, I think, from my own perspective and from the perspective of some developers in the area, you know, you guys are telling one story, Gardner tells them a different story, Gardner doesn't say anything, and, you know, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and what I wanna know is that we have a plan, we have a joint strategy moving forward. That's the performance standard I wanna know that, you know, and maybe,
Well, I think, and to be blunt, I think you are, and Tom chipped in on it, they're the slave to several masters, so the metrics won't ever compare, and Gardner will be involved from Gardner's perspective, but the EDC won't always be involved from a uniquely Gardner perspective, so they can't commit to that being their presentation, their view model. How do you hold them to that standard? We're not paying for an EDC to be a sole provider for the city of Gardner. You're participating in a group of individuals that's trying to expand the business climate within the Southwest Johnson County corridor. So this is what we come to, you know, we've had this discussion every year. And in my perspective, we're not hiring the EDC to work for the city of Gardner. We're participating in the group, and there's a cost to participate for the city to do so. And what they do as part of that partnership is when they are out and visiting with individuals in the business community beyond even what we see here, but because of the conventions and the other things Tom's gone to and visited I don't know how many times a year, he keeps the whole area in perspective, and we're paying to be participating in that. It truly is a partnership from my perspective. I think when we get to an agreement that drills down to this is
an agreement, a consulting agreement where you work for us, but I just don't see it as that sort of agreement. And if I'm the only one that does, I understand that, and I'm fine with that, but I've never seen it as an agreement. You don't work for us, we're committing to the partnership, and part of that commitment comes with a financial responsibility, and that's just the way I've always viewed this relationship.
But I think what we're trying to say and what we have said is, we want to know what your priorities are so we can put those into our program.
And
Those will be part, and I think that's what everybody's saying. We just need to find the verbiage, we need to find the correct measurables or whatever and get those to you. And I think that can be done. As the mayor said, the Economic Development Committee is meeting. Chip is on that committee. We're dedicated to helping the city of Gardner, city of Edgerton, New Century to be successful.
And to your point, Keith, I understand what the nature of EDC is, but I also understand that we are not a regional governing body. Our interest, our primary interest is the city of Gardner. I mean, I know that there's concern about regional development on this body, but we can only control what's within our city limits. And from that perspective, I have to speak on behalf of the interests of the city of Gardner in this regard. And in that sense, I need to protect our interests. That's the whole point of this contract, is to protect both the interests of the EDC and the city of Gardner. So it's not just, I understand where they're coming from. I just need to know that we're working together in a partnership, and that it's not one side knowing what's going on and another side not knowing what's going on. And I've got a concern about that. So, I want to keep that out of that as much as possible.
Well, I will say that, economic development has been one of the key points in developing our budgets for 2014 and 2015, and will probably be going forward. And I would say that the EDC in Southwest Johnson County is an important part of that, but that's also part and parcel the reason that we are hiring a business and economic development director instead of replacing the community development director. And it's also the reason that we're members of the KCADC now. We want to have as many lines in the water as we can have, and these are folks that work in the best interest of the people of Southwest Johnson County. So that's all I have to say.
Do we have any flexibility on these payments? I mean, what would happen if we changed these payment dates? So if we said April and October, I mean, what would that do?
Is that to better align with your budget?
No, I would
cycle,
say
or?
it's more to work, because I kind of agree with Steve in the fact that, I mean, I feel like we have talked about this many times. I get what Heath is saying about we're a participant, but I feel like we don't always get to the information that we're looking for. So each year we have this conversation. So I'll give you a perfect example. And I know, I mean, Tom and I meet, periodically, and so I know that he gets a lot of inquiries. Somebody coming in and looking for 1,000 square feet of warehouse or what have you. Most of that stuff is confidential and it doesn't go anywhere. But I would like to start seeing a lot more kind of root cause information that says, hey, these are the inquiries that I received this month, all of them. This is why they didn't come to Gardner. This is why we didn't even get a second look. It's because we didn't have this available or, what have you. And that's, to me, the actionable information that we need, that I feel like I may get in some individual conversations, but I don't think that we have a good way to pull it all together and present that kind of as an encompassing plan that we can go and attack.
Yeah, it's like a SWOT analysis, if you're familiar with that organizational theory. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. If we don't know where we need to take action to fix systemic issues within our communities, we can make ourselves more attractive to developers and to other entities. How the heck are we going to be able to make those changes and make us a more hospitable place to do business?
Christie, I guess I would want to know, when would you propose that the second payment be distributed?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying,
you're saying,
in my opinion, if we're going to agree to this contract, there are some specific, I think, actions that we should, document to say, these are things with specific dates. These are things that we're going to partner and work out. The measurements, what have you, whatever those are. And then, likely, they're not gonna be done before February 15th. So I guess that's what I'm saying is, can we work through, do we have flexibility? What does changing these payment dates do to you? So that we can work through those and have some of those actions in place and resolved prior to the first payment being made.
Well, I'll tell you from our standpoint, the city of Gardner is a significant partner in the EDC. We mentioned that before. I'm a small business owner, and I'm sure many of you are as well, and we've got a budget in advance. We've got expenses that are incurred on a weekly, monthly cycle, and so it's important that our revenue is maintained within that same cycle. And so I'm personally, I don't speak for the entire board, but as the chair, I'm personally against modifying the cycle. I think my request and my proposal was for us to work with your city administrator and our board, which you're very much a part of, to resolve these questions, these issues for you. But we're asking tonight for approval of our contract.
And the EDC is in the process of trying to onboard a new president. And I'm concerned if we, that this, not taking action on this in a timely manner, it might impact, as much as hiring somebody, but luring someone here, the kind of person that we want representing us through this organization.
Mayor makes a very good point.
Other questions regarding that?
Well, I haven't really weighed in, but I agree with Christie and Steve on everything they've said, except for, I feel like we've already kind of made a commitment, and if it's budget impactful, that maybe, I don't know if we can separate it into thirds or something like that, give this first payment, so we're not hurting you budget-wise, work out the details. If we can't work out I don't know, maybe there could be some things that we could benefit both sides, maybe, since we're partners. I don't wanna, that's would be a pretty big hole in your budget.
Absolutely.
But I do agree with Christie and Steve, we really need to work on these measurables.
I think it comes to whether you approve the contract or not. If you approve the agreement, really from a budget standpoint, it makes no impact of when we pay them. If you say that you vote in approval of the agreement today, you're committing to $35,000 to the partnership. It doesn't matter whether you pay that in February or August. It doesn't matter from the city's perspective. Now, if you want to reword the contract to say we're only committing to half of that with contingencies in place that must be met by June 1st, that's a completely different agreement that's not been negotiated. But to change the payment date doesn't benefit the city in any way. You either approve the agreement and you think that's the support that you want to give to the EDC, or you say, I don't approve the agreement, and then that takes us back to where we don't have a partnership in place because the other contract, correct me if I'm wrong, it expired at the end of January. Is that correct? And we just decide to go in a different path for this year. I think that's the agreement. Changing the payment schedule, it doesn't provide any benefit to the city.
No.
You're either in or you're out. So there is no, let's pay them here and some there if they do this. You commit to the relationship. And if that's what the vote is, and if it goes a different way, then we'll just have to reanalyze how we want to attack EDC moving forward, because that's a completely different strategy, and losing an asset in that. And personally, where we're at, we want to be business friendly. You need to build bridges and not build walls, but when you beat up an agreement like this, it gets out there that you're building walls and not making it easy to work with, and that's the fear I have when it's looked at, because there's value to the partnership, and if you don't see that, then just vote down the agreement. But change of the payments doesn't change the benefit and create a benefit to the city.
I have no problem with the contract providing a benefit to the city. I have a problem with, let me ask a question to Tom. And we had this discussion last year, you know that, we had a long discussion on Section 2. In fact, we asked it to be included in the last agreement, okay? did the city receive a detailed plan of work on which the specific activities to be performed by the EDC were to be delineated?
We did have program work, we did submit it. It, did not have the detail you're talking about, because we were working on the comp plan, the economic development plan. Our program of work in detail was to, address the marketing through specific activities, to, work with, different organizations, et cetera. But again, we have been working throughout the year with the city in the development of that plan. For us to come today and say, we pulled these out of your economic development strategy, and here's what we're gonna do, I don't think is right. Or to, just say, okay, this is what we're gonna do for you, it doesn't have any relation to your economic development.
And as a partnership, we're doing just as much for you as you're doing for us. It's not just an exchange of cash.
Correct.
We need to be partners. But I will, take issue with one comment that was made from the dais, that if we quote unquote beat up the contract, that we're building a wall with developers or entities. What we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out where we are falling down. We're doing our own gap analysis here as to how we can improve our own internal operations. And if we can get metrics or some sort of feedback from our development partners in that regard, that's a win-win for everybody. I don't think that's necessarily a problem. And I'll tell you right now, the developers would like for us to clean up some of the issues that we're having to deal with right now in our city. And if we can get those from our agreements, I'm all for it.
Does that need to be spelled out in an agreement? I mean, can you not just go and sit down with Tom at lunch and ask your
There's
questions?
two members of the dais that are members of the board. I mean, the mayor and Cheryl are both members of, so we can't have an easier way to communicate what our needs are.
Yeah, on top of that, some of the stuff that you're talking about, some of the onus is on us to go ahead and finish the economic development strategy in a timely manner, number one. Number two, we're gonna be doing wholesale changes and rewrite of the land development code. I think these are things that are going to impact in exactly the kind of way that you're talking, more so than what we're going to do is going to be more impactful and more helpful to the EDC than having